Welcome to the podcast that explores mysterious disappearances, bizarre worldly occurrences, strange phenomenon, and basically everything that's weird. Welcome to the podcast. Everything that's weird. We're your host. I'm Anthony. This is Brandon, and we're here with our researcher Mario. And tonight, yes, we are going back in time or back to the future, depending on
without all that creepy,
what side
incesty kind of vibe.
Yeah, is it John Mulaney?
Yeah,
he does a hysterical thing about Back to the Future,
mm-hmm.
and he says, they pitching that movie. he's like, so they build a time machine, and they're like, oh, so they go like back in time and they stop the Kennedy assassination. He's like, no. Like, we thought it'd be funny if he tried to fuck his mom. He's like, but he doesn't fuck his mom. Okay. So this is the story of Sergei Ponomarenko, not the figure skater.
Not the gold medalist figure skater from Russia.
Which honestly, I didn't know until I started looking this up. That guy actually.
Right. You have to weed through all the figure skating stuff to get.
So in a nutshell, have you ever read The Slaughterhouse-Five?
No.
Okay, The Slaughterhouse-Five is about a guy that's unfrozen in time. So his consciousness, it's kind of hard to explain, but his consciousness floats between different parts of his life. So like, think about the different parts of your life. All of a sudden, he's like a teenager. And with him in this particular story, he's like in the war. He's like 19. He's in the World War II. And then he's like a grandpa. And then he's like a dad. And then he's like a newlywed. And that's kind of the story that we have today. So it starts off, it's 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And out of nowhere, this guy is being weird.
That gets you arrested in Kyiv.
Well, yeah. So it's 2006, Ukraine.
Yep.
And he's like, has no idea what's going on. And he's looking around. He's like confused. And this draws the attention of some police officers to come up and start talking to him. And they're like, who are you? And he tells them his name. And he says, what's weird is this street was called something else. And so they look at him, and he's got really old clothes on, but they look brand new. And he's got a really old camera. But again, it's like brand new.
Yeah.
So they start, asking what he's doing, where he's, who he is, his ID. They get his ID. And when they get his ID, mind you, 2006, he has a USSR, Soviet Union identification.
Yeah. Which dissolved in 91.
Right.
Yeah, and he keeps asking him what date, what's the year. Over and over again, he keeps asking what year it is.
So there's a podcast about Scorpion's Wind of Change.
Yeah.
and how it was made by the CIA. I'm just telling you, it's out there. Pretty good.
And birds aren't
Pretty
real.
Good. You know what though? There's a little bit of truth in it. It was like a whole campaign. It was a social campaign. So a lot of people don't know this. Real quick, before we continue the story, the Berlin Wall came down by accident. They were trying to unify Germany, but they didn't want it to happen the way it happened. And some guy was given an order to start letting people in, and what they meant by that was checking IDs and letting people come in from East Germany to West Germany and vice versa.
Right.
Instead, he said, bring down the wall. Totally true. And it started this like crazy domino effect. And everybody's like, wall's coming down. And it's just, that is literally how it started. What they wanted to do was like this soft open, like they kind of do, in Korea, you know, where some North Koreans go into South Korea and some South Koreans come into North Korea, and they have like this tea party, very nice etiquette. Instead, it was like rock and roll, bitches, and like, you know. So, fun fact, I have a piece of the Berlin Wall on top of my refrigerator. So, anyway.
Nice.
They start looking into him. He gives them this thing. They think, well, he's crazy immediately. Yeah. And because he's insistent that, you know, this is the time that he's from, and he has a picture in his wallet of this lady who's his fiance at the time, in his timeline. And so they kind of send him off to the doctor.
Oh yeah, they take him to the psychiatric clinic.
They go see her, and she's like, really? Because he disappeared once before.
Well, he goes, yeah. He got, the police took him to the psychiatric clinic in Kyiv to see this Dr. Pablo Kucherkov. And he examined him, and they took the camera, and because he wasn't they weren't believing his story, obviously. And because he kept saying he was born in 1932 and blah, blah, blah. That would make him 74. And they said he looked like he was anywhere between 25 and 30.
Right.
And he gets there, and the police get curious why he's with this doctor and he's getting examined. And they decide they want to develop his film to see what's on the thing, because he kept telling them, just look at my camera. And they had to find somebody first, because the film that was in the camera they hadn't made since like 1970s, sometime in the 70s. They quit making the film for that camera. So they had to find a vintage camera store and get the guy to develop it in his darkroom with all the right proper equipment. And he told the officers that the film was like brand new, even though they haven't made it since the 70s. And it wasn't all used. So they developed the film, and they find on it these pictures from what appears to be 1950s Kyiv, with the guy that they just arrested and this woman that he was talking about in these photos in different places in Kyiv. And he's wearing the clothes he had on when they arrest him in some of these pictures. And so while he's doing that, they're doing their own like little background investigation of this. And he spent like 2 years?
Right.
He spends like 2 years there, and then he just disappears out of the hospital. No, they got cameras and everything. No cameras show him leaving. He just disappears. So they get more curious about this guy, and they go and they start looking into him, and they find that there's a missing persons report from 1958 for him, that he did go, a man named Sergei Ponomarenko went missing in 1958. They go and find his girlfriend. They look her up. She's like 74 now. And when they go and see her, she says, yeah, he disappeared in 1958, but he showed back up 2 years later. The exact amount of time he was supposedly in the future.
So they have like video when he goes and actually talks to the psychiatrist. Psychologist or psychiatrist?
Psychiatrist.
San Diegans. So she says he's just fixated on her cell phone. And he can't stop looking at it, and he's enamored by it. He's just like can't handle what it is, and that she's talking on it, and that it's a communication device. And she said the same thing. He's out of place. But then later, his girlfriend, wife, fiance. Did they say? Is it his wife?
It was just his girlfriend.
Okay. She's in possession of another picture.
No, it was on his camera.
Okay.
I know where you're going, but that was on his camera.
But it's from 2050.
Yes.
And it shows a different Kyiv.
Oh, that's where. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about, because on his film.
No, I thought. Yeah, I was gonna say. I thought she had possession.
Yes, but because on his film, he said just before this incident happened, he saw some kind of craft in the sky he couldn't recognize, and he took a picture of it. So when they developed the film, they find all these old photos, but they find on it a photo of a UFO. It was a bell-shaped UFO in the sky. And then they go, when they were talking to the girlfriend, and she says he was gone for 2 years, but he returned. But then he disappeared again and never came back. And years later, she received a letter in the mail, and it had photos in it, and they were apparently from him from the year 2050.
And it shows him standing against the skyline of Kyiv, which didn't exist.
Right. Yeah. It was like not in 2006 when she was showing him the photo. There was all these skyscrapers and.
Yeah, it looks like a city.
Yeah, big city.
So then security footage, he never left the room. He just disappears. And that's kind of it. So
yeah.
What the story is whether or not this is real, how it happened. Is it possible that it happened?
But they call it one of the most documented cases of time travel, because what you have is the police arresting him. The police, obviously they're going to file a report. The police took him to a psychiatric clinic. He was treated by a doctor. He was interviewed by the doctor on film. He was filmed entering the hospital. He wasn't filmed leaving the hospital. He had film on his camera that was developed to show pictures of him in Kyiv in the dated timelines.
He has somebody actually corroborating the story.
Yeah,
whether or not it's real. She actually is like, yeah.
Yep, a girlfriend corroborates the story.
Let me guess. He went back in time.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him for 2 years. He's time traveling, I guess.
He does it all the
time. But then he shows up with this picture, older man, and with the backdrop of Kyiv, and comparatively, the photos, it's a completely undeveloped piece of land, but here it's like a city. It looks like New York City or Chicago or any other kind of populated city. They never have found him. They've never found him to this day. They haven't been able to track him down. They don't understand how he left. They haven't been able to consider it a hoax. Or, lock down that if it's real. It's just kind of this story that's out there. But it is interesting.
Yeah, it's got everything. I mean,
it does.
And even aliens.
It does have aliens. And we'll get to that in the second one. That's going to be my first point in the second segment. But yeah, so Sergei Ponomarenko, not the figure skater, shows up in 2006 thinking it's
1958
with documents and papers that puts him as part of a citizen of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, and everything's like pristine. His clothes are pristine. His camera's pristine. The film's pristine. His ID that's from the Soviet Union that hasn't existed for decades.
In movies, they say he's a period piece because he is to the period.
Yeah,
everything is pristine about him to the period.
Yep.
They send him to get some kind of evaluation. He gets an evaluation. He's acting weird. He tells this story. They track down the lady that's part of the story. She's older. She's like, yeah, that mofo went missing in the 50s. Took off for 2 years. Came back. And I haven't seen him since. He sent me pictures. I have this picture. He says it's from 2050. And it shows Kyiv as a populated, thriving, skyscraper-laden city.
Mm-hmm.
When they go to check up on him, he's gone from the hospital. And that's where we're at, right?
That's it.
All right. Let's see what we think. Let's get into some facts. Let's see what we think. Okay, so right off the bat, the bell-shaped UFO. What's crazy about that? I was doing a little research on this last night, and I kind of got a lot into the bell of the Nazis. So apparently, a lot of people don't know, or maybe they don't. It's just not really taught a lot. But they were so much farther ahead than we were, technology-wise, during that time. Just like on simple technology. When I say simple technology, for the time it was like space age. But they had jets, and our fighter pilots were like, "Holy shit!" Like planes, they're going twice as fast, as ours, and they just didn't have enough time to crank them out. Basically, but they had developed jet propulsion way earlier than it was still a concept with the United States. And there's Operation Paperclip. It's about all the scientists in Nazi Germany that were kind of smuggled out of the country when that political climate took over. And us in the Soviet Union basically played old maid and traded scientists, and then all the way through till the end of the war, where there were Nazi criminals that became part of the American scientific effort and the Soviet Union scientific effort. one of the things that came up when I was watching this was the bell, and the Germans didn't really understand what it was, but they had captured some kind of energy, and they were studying it, and they had made some kind of breakthrough at the beginning of when America got into the war, like in 41, 42.
Yeah.
But it was like a technology they were developing for like 10 years. And they weren't sure what it did exactly. But it levitated. It had like immense power. It could knock out systems. And they just weren't able to figure out how to direct it and use it and all that.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it since, so I don't know if that's all just like folklore, or whatever. But in my opinion, and I am not a physicist, I don't really understand wormholes or anything. I just kind of don't think you can go back in time, but some people do. Some theoretical physicists
You can look
do.
back in time.
That's what they say.
Where you do every time you look up in the sky.
That's true. Well, that is true. I mean, there's that movie Paul with the alien, and he's like, if you think about it, it's time travel, and he's jumping between time zones.
Yeah.
So yeah, but like real. There's the Flight of the Navigator theory, and if you don't know, that's a movie.
Yeah.
Is that Disney? I don't know what it is. I don't
know. I don't know who made it, but it was
Spielberg. Feels like I don't know. But what Flight of the Navigator theory was that this kid was picked up by a UFO,
an AI UFO, right?
Right, and he flew, across the galaxy, and flew back, and to him,
almost no time had passed.
Like a day maybe, or like half a day had passed, but in Earth years it was like 20 years. And they thought he was just like a missing child that got kidnapped or whatever, but in actuality he was just like breaking the time barrier basically. So that actually does happen.
Well, it's like all goes back to Einstein's theory of relativity, and it's all relative. Time's relative. Like if it was like the example was like if you moved away from a clock fast enough,
so
clock would stop.
They've had twin astronauts, and they've worn. And I don't really understand this. And Mario, maybe you can help us out of this. But I guess the less mass that there is, the faster time goes, and the more mass there is, the slower time goes.
Yeah,
and they kind of explained it like the movie Interstellar, which I've only seen like one time.
I've seen it a dozen times. Interstellar is they go to they were looking for a planet to inhabit because the Earth's dying, and one of the planets that one of the people found, it's next to a singularity or a black hole.
So the gravity's more.
Gravity's a lot more intense, and so they have to keep the ship out away from that gravitational pull because time is being distorted as you get closer. So time's moving slower for everybody down on the planet. And I think they said they did a calculation they were talking about, and it was like for every minute it's like 7 years on Earth.
Okay.
So they end up being down there for like an hour or something. So when they get, and he's being affected, there's one guy stays on the ship, and he's being affected by time too, but not as great as Earth, and it's like when they get back, they've been gone for like 11 years, some shit like that. He's got like gray hair.
Okay, so That is Flight of the Navigator.
I don't leak, you do.
So that is actually a real thing, because there was twins that were astronauts, and they did an experiment. One stayed on Earth and one went into space.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were born 6 seconds apart. They're the Kelly brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And they had anatomical wristwatches and to log their actual time. And when they came back to Earth, the one that was in space,
he was younger.
He was younger than his brother. Yes. Sorry, I had to run that through my head to think about it. But yes.
Yeah.
But so and not by much, by like a few seconds.
Yeah, because he was spending time in like 0G.
Right, exactly.
So the gravity wasn't affecting time.
Okay, so when you think about that, over, if gravity is not a thing and propulsion is not a thing, and you can manipulate gravity and you can go away, and you flew to Pluto and back, by the time you got back, more time would have passed on Earth than you would have been gone.
Yeah.
And that is a real, when you try to wrap your head around that, it's a hard concept to grasp.
Right.
But you could picture spinning a basketball.
It doesn't take much for it to be a concept that's hard to grasp for me.
Me either.
Sometimes I'm just nodding my head.
But you're not on the basketball if it's spinning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're basically moving faster than the basketball. You're moving, faster than the time. And time is relative to your, position. So, okay.
Yeah. Now, because there is theories about time, like all time happens all at once. Past, present, future. It's all happening at the same time.
Okay, that goes into
that's like
string theory.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which
starts turning my brain into mush.
So one thing, the Soviet Union, I can tell you this. My buddy went to Europe and he bought me and my roommate KGB watches. And they were cool. They had the old hammer and a sickle. They were black. They were kinetic. And they had a leather band. They were cool. They were cool looking. And on the back, they had this dolphin jumping over a wave, right? And it had all this Russian writing around it. And I lived in LA and we had band practice, and after band we were at this bar and having drinks or whatever. And all these Russian bartenders are there. And this girl, I said, "Hey, are you Russian?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, here." Took off my watch. I said, "Do you read Russian?" She's like, "Yeah." I said, "Okay. Can you tell me what this says on the back of it?" And it's a KGB watch, which is like a CIA watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking it had some kind of secret message, like the drop is in the park.
Right.
Yeah. He's the guy in glasses.
Right.
And so she takes it. She's like, "I have to go to the back." I said, "All right." So she goes to the back and she comes out and she's like, how do you say it? Water resistant? And I'm like, God damn it. Give me my goddamn watch back. But that's the reason they lost the Cold War. That was the worst watch ever. It lost time. It lost time all the time. Like you could. I even bought at Sharper Image because it was a kinetic watch, which means when you walk, it winds itself.
Right.
So I even went to Sharper Image, which they don't even have those stores. Do they have those stores anymore?
I think you can go online.
Okay. But they had like a kinetic watch winder. It was like $19 or something. So it's something that you put on your nightstand and you plug it in and it basically moves back and forth and like winds your watch.
Right.
If you have a kinetic watch. And that thing would lose 5 minutes a day. They were the worst watches ever. That's why they lost the Cold War.
They lost it because they were late.
Yeah.
Okay, launch the nukes now. They disabled us 5 minutes ago.
The wall already came down, man. It's already down. All right, so the other thing is there is video of him and these with his psychiatrist or psychologist. So psychologists can do drugs, right?
No, I think psychiatrists do.
Okay. So psychiatrists.
I could be wrong. We might need Mario on that one.
Psychiatrists are trained in both medicine and mental health.
Psychologists
focus on mental health.
Okay. All right. So the psychologist, because to my knowledge, they didn't give him any medicine.
Yeah.
She's like questioning him. She's kind of like running through.
I'm looking it up. I think it was just a couple days he was there.
Right, but her she corroborates it. She's like, he answered all the questions. He has this identification that fits the time that he says when he's there.
Mm-hmm.
The camera is a big deal because it's sort of like having a Polaroid.
Yeah,
right.
He had a. There was. I was trying to think of what the name of that film that was in it. It was called something. There was a specific type of film that was in the
something
camera.
Acetate.
It was. Yeah, but it was a brand like.
Yes.
Sfema film.
Okay.
That was in the camera. It's like a very specific type of film, which they say you could have purchased all the way up in a store, all the way up until like the 90s, even though it was discontinued long before that.
So, one of the things that kind of amazed me when I got to LA was that I didn't realize. So, okay, there's a whole department when you make a movie or a show called continuity. And that's like, so like if you film a scene and Brandon, you're in the scene and I'm in the scene, right? And you're like puka shell necklace is hanging outside of your shirt. And, my shirt's unbuttoned with like 2 buttons and I got like glasses on and we're talking.
Right.
That they literally come up to you and they take a picture of the scene that you're about to film with a Polaroid. And they, as soon as it comes out, they write on it the timestamp, who's in it, Brandon Anthony, and that goes into the continuity folder so that That's why American movies and film are so much better, because it's just the details that, and you'll catch it, like web sleuths and people online will be like, oh, this scene he's wearing red shoes instead of white shoes.
Yeah.
Right. But that's somebody's job, is to be like, no, Brandon's necklace is outside of his shirt, not inside of his shirt. Anthony's got glasses. There's somebody that does all that.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I was floored that they could even get Polaroid film.
I'm just living that salt life.
Yeah, right. But, like, yeah, to this story, this is very old technology for the time.
Yeah. The it was all period correct. Too.
And
like the camera and the film, the clothes, everything was period correct. It all checked.
And
to their knowledge.
And the film was cellulose acetate film, which I don't really know exactly what that is, but that is definitely like a certain kind of film that develops a certain kind of way.
Yeah, it was like a safer alternative to what film used to be, because the old film used to be known to spontaneously combust.
Really?
Yeah, the cellulose acetate, that's it was the safer version of the earlier materials. It was like but that was period correct. Like they started doing that in the 50s.
So that's something I've never done. I've actually never made a film. I've made movies with digital, but I've actually never made a film. Sorry. Actually, they have to cut it. So when you make a movie, it's shot on, there's 3 kinds of films you can shoot. So the old films are shot on 16. Then the newer ones are 35, and then now it's like 70, and I think it's even higher than that for like IMAX and stuff. But up until the digital age, there was a real cut and paste, a true cut and paste method to splice film together.
End up on the chopping block.
Right, you end up on the cutting room floor.
Yep. Chopping block, cutting room floor. I think the ones for beheading people.
So I can tell you, I've been on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, I think I've been on the chopping block. I've been in the doghouse too, but that I have nothing to do with any of these.
But the bell-shaped thing was particularly interesting to me, because that was something that not even like UFO things. So there was a show on History called Hunting Hitler. Mm-hmm. And we did this, right?
Right.
But
he's retired in Brazil now.
Right. Or a priest in Ecuador. But during that time, when the whole show, when they're going through, and they go through every possible way that could have happened, and they end up in Poland at one point, and all the descriptions of how this bell thing worked, it had to do with like some kind of electromagnetic field, similar to like the Philadelphia experiment. And all the diagrams and things that they had confiscated from the Nazis, mm-hmm. They found something that looked exactly like that in Poland, and it even had like a conduit. So it looked like a circle with columns and another circle on top, right? But it's huge. And the bottom circle was an encased conduit full of electric wire. And that was what generated this magnetic field or electronic field that enabled this thing to levitate and disrupt systems. And what they thought it was for was to jam radar and take planes out of the sky and things like that.
Right.
But like I said, the Germans never got that far. It's like a Bob Lazar. They had the technology, but they didn't know what to do.
Yeah, they didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
And I've watched enough stuff on the war too to know that there were actively like scientists that were working against Hitler because they didn't agree with what was going on, and they were kind of being made to do shit. So they were intentionally like slowing research projects and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think they even made a movie about it, I think.
Valkyrie? Is that Valkyrie?
No, I think it was called The Catcher Was a Spy.
Oh,
It was
I've never seen that.
It was about a Major League Baseball player at the time. They used him in a covert operation over in World War II.
Really?
Yeah, but it had something to do with their belief that one of the scientists was intentionally slowing the process in order to work, like, to help work against Hitler. So,
and there were like multiple attempts on his life. If you look at old video, or I guess film,
Mo Berg, I think that was the baseball player's name.
Okay.
If Mario wanted to look that up.
He has like kind of the Bob Dole thing where he has like one arm's kind of limp with the pen.
Yeah.
It's because
why'd you always got the fucking pen?
Yeah, right. Because what else are you gonna do with it?
I don't know, but that's just fucking. I don't know what's going on with that. Like,
I probably put a hammer.
Is it a comfort thing?
Or maybe, yeah.
Like a knife,
right? That might
a multi-tool.
That might get dangerous. Multi-tool. Right. But he was basically had like, I don't know if it was a limp arm or he lost a lot of function in his arm because some guy had sat down and at a meeting and put a briefcase bomb down, but because he was next to a pillar, the bomb blew up and it didn't kill him because they kind of knew that it was off the rails pretty early, pretty much when they were in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, we can't fight Russia in the United States. They knew that.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, it was like a terrible winter. And the United States was, all their
soldiers were hungover from their meth.
Yeah, right. Exactly. They did love their meth. The Nazis loved meth.
Mm-hmm. Did a lot of meth.
They did. But
that was the Blitzkrieg.
Yeah.
That's how they did it. That's how they got across Europe so fast. Meth. Look it up. It's real.
No, he was shot up with meth like every day.
Well, like they had like all the soldiers had like a little meth ration that they carried with them. They had a chance to. That was it. They could have won that war, but they got called off because the commander leading that was going across, leading the Blitzkrieg, he was doing things without permission and stuff, and it pissed him off, and they called a halt on him. But if they had let him go, it would have been over.
There's a lot of thing with the Nazis and like their technology and whatever, that they were way ahead, like like the Middle East.
Oh, disclaimer, by the way, we know this stuff because at some point you're going to get to the age where you'll watch war film. So just get ready for that. It's coming. If you're still young, if you're out there and you're young, you're going to start watching old war recreations and shit. World War II documentaries.
But I guess the point of all this is that, especially during that time, the 50s, there was this scramble. There was this scramble for power, and it was on between the United States and Russia.
Yeah.
So him saying something like this isn't crazy, because the Russians and the United States were competing fiercely for technology. And so, like, mentioning a bell-shaped thing is like, we're very novice in our history, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we know about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when you were saying, you start watching war films, Shane Gillis, you ever listen to him?
Yeah.
He's great. He said that's early onset Republican.
Yeah. You're gonna start watching war films and be a Republican.
So this guy, like, coming in and saying that, like, it really hits people in the truth, because they're like, well, I mean, that sounds right, The other thing is, before we go into what we think, we really got to talk about Kyiv becoming like a populated city. So this story is 2006. So one thing we have to consider: what if the Ukraine wins the war against Russia?
Fucking.
So
there's a deep rabbit hole with that one.
Right. So it's like Texas fighting the United States.
Okay. Do you know that, like, the Ukraine has this giant swaths of land that are considered like the most fertile land in Europe? They're the breadbasket of Europe.
Yes.
And what's going on over there is we're giving them money on a loan condition. Part of the loan condition is that they sell that land.
Yes.
The companies that have bought that land are Cargill, Monsanto, companies like that, right? Those companies are all owned by one company, BlackRock.
I mean, that's what we do.
So and the thing is,
they're
like, you're taking our tax dollars and sending it. They're not. They already spent your tax dollars.
Well,
they're borrowing money from China, sending it to them, getting these deals worked out with BlackRock. They get kickbacks from it, and then they use taxpayer dollars to pay off the loan to China.
So, okay,
it's money laundering 101.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So
they're not even hiding it anymore. They're just like, you can't do anything about it, fuck faces.
So I just saw this thing, and this has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat. It was kind of like a slip, but they were like, hey, homeless is like crazy. Grocery store prices are through the roof, and we're sending we sent like $200 billion to Ukraine, and we pledged like another $3 trillion. And Mitch McConnell is like, yeah, it doesn't matter because it all runs through American contractors. And everybody's like, what?
Yeah. Yep.
And it was kind of like a quick little thing. Somebody said, but that's what it is. There's that book. There's that book, The Confession of an Economic Hitman.
Well, it's a double kickback for them because the military contracts are being that they're using, because it equates to somewhere around $200 and something million a day. If you figure since Russian invasion to present day, how much money we've given them, it works out to around $225 million a day. And they say what's going on is that the contractors are all like American military contractors are picking up all these contracts that are being paid for by tax dollars. So it's not actually going to the Ukraine. It's going to contractors helping them fight the war. And then there's all these secondary conditions that are kickback shit too.
And I mean, that goes for every single war that we've been in. And that is, whether or not you want to believe it, is the reason for our prosperity. So when they like, we don't make anything. Yeah, we do. We make war.
Sure, we're real good at it too.
We're the best at it. And here's the double-edged sword for anybody fighting on the other side of us. And this is why they've been very careful not to be like, fuck Russia. Because if you notice, there isn't a huge fuck Russia stance.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, back to Ukraine, you guys. Come on. Back to you. Yeah.
You're right.
But they're like, why don't you say fuck Russia? And the reason is because probably Russia's going to win. And if they don't, there's going to be some kind of long, drawn-out thing where we're still going to have to do business with Russia, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you help just enough on one side.
And Russia's still not going to want NATO at their doorstep.
Right. So you help just enough on one side so you look like the good guy. And then you're still helping the other side because you want their business. And the Ukraine's full of rare metals and shit that we use for technology.
Yeah.
All right. We hit everything.
I think we hit stuff that wasn't even part of this. Yeah, so we're pretty good. I mean, we were getting into fucking conspiracy theories galore here.
Yeah, but that's what this is. This is the guy that came back in 2006 from 1958, and he's he's from the Soviet Union. Gets questioned by his doctor, tells him, gives like a little bit of an insight about the future that Kyiv ends up being like a metropolis.
Yeah.
Gives a little, gives enough clues that his fiance is like, yeah, that mofo left for 2 years.
Stupid fucking time traveling bullshit.
And what? Now let me guess. He's time traveling again.
Let me guess. He went back in time again. Tried to kiss his mom.
To beat up the neighbor boy.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at.
Still waiting on a hoverboard.
Did Sergei Ponomarenko, not the figure skater,
right,
go back to the future? And is he unstuck in time? Is he a time traveler? Because you're right, it is the most documented case of time travel.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get into what we think. All right, well, let's get into what we think. You can go first. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I believe Sergei Ponomarenko, the figure skater.
Yeah.
I don't believe the time traveler, Sergei. There's they say it's the most documented case of time travel. They talk about all that we talked about it, the period correct clothes, period correct camera, film, yada yada, all these things. But when you delve into it, and I've looked around all over the web, and I found a couple people. There's a guy that does a YouTube. He's pretty popular, Joe Scott, I believe his name is, and he did some digging, and I found another couple people that did some digging. They talked to film experts and stuff like that. And there's just a lot of stuff that's not adding up. So he tried to find any kind of police report from 2006 from the Ukraine. Well, granted, he didn't give this caveat. I will. The Ukraine has gone through massive changes over the years, including them overthrowing their government. And I think it was 2012. The Ukrainian people went in and took out their government. That's why we have what we got going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Zelensky's in there as the president of Ukraine because the people ousted their Soviet-friendly government, and not like peacefully ousted them or voted them out. Like they stormed the Capitol.
Yeah, and that was
It was covered. There was a documentary, I think it was called Ice and Fire or something like that, Ice on Fire or something like that, that was about the
so people always say, well, it's Russia. Russia's just part of the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have all these other, it's the United States, right? So like it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. They have like,
and if you look, and this isn't a secret, this isn't a conspiracy theory, but conspiracy theorists out there that are listening to our show will recognize the name I'm about to say, George Soros.
Yeah.
He on camera admitted that he funded the uprising in 2012 that overthrew their government. He literally said it on an interview. He's like, it's most likely our funding that
we do this.
And it's like, this guy, he used to turn in, he's Jewish, and he used to turn Jews in. He was that guy that the Germans used to use, that they would have like loyal Jews that would rat out other Jews in the town. When they got to a town, they'd befriend certain Jews and get them to turn other people in. And he was one of those people, and he said he did it proudly.
And this is our last show.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much.
Right. This is all stuff he said on camera, though. But
it does get crazy.
Either political. Way, it's kind of dicey to say, like, look through the records in the Ukraine is what I'm saying, because shit changes. Like, you're talking about looking at records from 2006, and they've had like a regime changes since then, and a lot of stuff has been lost, blown up, been in battles, stuff like that. So, but either way, he couldn't find anything on the police report, and in fact, he found out that everything that when you're looking up this story, all the photographs, all the film, all the interview with the psychologist, the film in the psychiatric ward, all that stuff was all from a show, a Ukrainian TV show called Aliens, where they did recreations. When you do, you're doing the story and you do the recreations, that's all the stuff you're seeing. Those aren't the actual pictures. Those aren't the actual videos. Those are all created by them to retell the story. And not to say that means it's fake. It's just saying that the documented part of it isn't really there. It's not really documented. It's just said that it's documented. So
it's like a reenactment.
To prove that it's actually documented, he went around, he tried to look up all these names. He couldn't find anything. He even tried to contact the people who made the original film for Aliens, the producers, anything. He couldn't get anybody to respond. So not to say that proves that it wasn't true, but it does prove that there's, the information isn't prevalent like they say it is. And there's even the big part is that the picture of that they said that the lady that his girlfriend had of him in the future, if they study in the background, it's copy and paste. There's even the Empire, what looks like the Empire State Building in the picture. So it just looks like they just took stock footage of different cities and, clipped it out and photoshopped it in the background. And so that picture doesn't hold a lot of weight. And then there's a few things with the film too, like, and people really got out there because they were talking about the film itself traveling through time.
Right.
Would have deteriorated.
I don't know about that, but
they said it would got what did they call it? It's called like something vinegar, something. They call it something vinegar because it smells like vinegar because of the film like turns. Vinegar syndrome. it's called. That's the degradation of film over time.
Okay.
And there's people that's saying that if he was traveling through time, that would be like that would what would happen to the whatchamacallit.
All right. So what are you calling?
I think it's all bullshit. I think it's just a big fake story. I think it's one of those stories of a story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think we did another one like that.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, with somebody wants to retell the story, so they do a whole documentary on it, and it gains ground. But really, the only thing you have to go off of is that documentary. So it's a story of a story. And I think it's just all. Unfortunately, I think it's all bullshit. I think our other time traveler story holds a lot more weight than this does.
Okay. So you're.
I can't remember what was that guy's name. What do you remember that guy's name?
Give me a minute. Give me a minute. I'll find it. All right. So what do you say? What are you saying? That this didn't happen.
I think it was a story of a story, and it was for a sci-fi TV show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that wasn't even that great. So, and they just kind of recreated everything that they didn't have the actual evidence of. And the stuff that they did have evidence of was obviously faked, like the future pictures. So I'm going complete bullshit on this one. I don't even think there's like a shred of.
I think that what you're talking about was Mike Markham. He made a time right.
Mike Merriam. Mario's saying Mike Merriam.
I think it's Markham.
Markham. He's misspelling it.
Autocorrect, dude.
Okay,
but he invented a time machine and threw him into a field in Ohio.
Yeah, and like,
which is the worst place to be. I know we said this before. It's the worst.
Yeah. Makes the story more real though.
Yeah, it does.
Not like he ended up in Bermuda.
Right.
You know.
Right. Or he wasn't in like Berlin when the wall
You were
fell.
in a cornfield in Idaho, you know, nobody, you know. But yeah, I think that story holds more weight than this one does. I more believe that time traveler story than I do this one. I think this was just a bullshit story of a story that got blown up over time when it caught wind. And I think the Mike Markham thing was like legit. This dude knew some stuff. He knew how to do some stuff, and he might have pulled something off that was like kind of crazy. I don't know if it was actual time travel or whatever, or being able to go like jump gate where you go from place to place. But this one to me is just, and here's the other thing. One last little piece of evidence that works against this story is that I keep reading it. Did you read where he gave his full name to the police?
Yes.
Okay. Well, did you happen to know it was also the exact full name of the figure skater we've been talking about all night?
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. So middle name and everything. So
that's like saying I'm Greg Louganis.
Yeah, but
I'm
like
Carl Lewis.
But like whatever their middle name is, like he said that too. Like when they asked him what his full name was, he said, and I'm trying to find it there, what his middle name was, because it's the same as the figure skaters. He told them.
All right, so it didn't happen.
It didn't happen at all. Like it's not even like there's not like usually some of these stories that we do. It's kind of like I think that what was the doppelganger teacher that we had.
Yeah.
I think it's like that where it's just, that one even has more to it than this one because at least there was a lady lying. You know, this one you can't even find the people that were part of the story lying about it. It's just like it's just the story that's out there. Yeah. So the figure skater's full name is Sergei Vladimirovich Ponomarenko, and that's exactly what he told the police his full name was.
You would think they'd be like, when did he win the gold? 12?
92.
Oh, well, why wouldn't they be like, yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Carl Lewis.
Yeah, well, he had he won like the gold, he won the silver, he won the
That's what I mean.
bronze.
Like, why didn't the authorities be like, I know Carl
especially
Lewis.
in that area, because he
Yeah.
would have been pretty. You'd think he'd be pretty famous at least, where
Right.
like, you know what I mean? He's 3-time world champion, 4-time European champion.
Or they're like,
I mean, this guy medaled all the time. He had like tons of medals.
I mean, it's Michael Jordan. If anybody's going to get back in time, it's Michael Jordan.
Right?
All right.
So, no,
So
I don't believe
it
any
didn't happen.
bit of this story. I think every bit of it's bullshit. I don't even think there's an ounce of truth to it.
Okay.
Except for
All right.
maybe that UFO picture.
So, this I'm going to say happened. We're the best at TV. We're absolutely the best. And I don't care if you're from a foreign country and you have a show that's awesome. Great. All in all, collectively, if you watch foreign TV and you watch American TV, our shitty TV is far superior. Now, every once in a while, there's a Squid Game, or there's a movie like Snatch, or Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or there's like these, or Life of Pi, these movies that are made, or shows that are made, that are on par, right, with American
Slumdog Millionaire.
Right, with production companies. But, like, I was in Finland, and flipping through TV's fucking terrible, right? And all of a sudden, Scott Pilgrim versus the World comes on. I never watched that show. I've never seen it one time. It runs around the clock in Finland for whatever reason.
That's
in
so
English, not even with subtitles. So
it's so weird what some countries cling on to that's American, like
right.
David
And it's
Hasselhoff
Michael Cera.
Yeah,
And it's a very weird show. It kind of has like some metaphysical things where like whatever.
Yeah.
The point is, I think this is one of those shows that it's kind of like the moon landing hoax when they put it on prime time and played it for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's an obvious fiction, right?
Or when Animal Planet did that mermaids thing.
Sure, it's obvious
That's what
fiction.
that Joe Scott brought up. He said he's like, yeah, that actually happened.
Right. So it's like it's obvious fiction, but they play it as real. And as much as I'm a believer, and like there's weird stuff, right? That's why the whole reason we have this podcast,
right,
is that there's weird stuff. That this particular story has a lot of holes. One thing we didn't get to is that, the date that he's missing, and he's returned, and they're like, well, it happened on this day, and then they send it to the psychiatrist. It's like 2 days later. Mm-hmm. His passport that has the Soviet Union, that date is skewed.
Yeah. Even the film that, like the surveillance camera in the hospital that he was at,
right,
it was time stamped at the bottom, and that Joe Scott went back and looked up the date for that year, like 2006, whatever date they put down in 2006, because it's set on there like Wednesday or Thursday, whatever. And he went back and looked, and it was a Sunday, not a Thursday.
And, the reason I'm saying all this is to go back to what we were talking about. Brandon and the puka shell necklace outside of his shirt. Anthony with the sunglasses on.
Yeah. Salt life.
There's continuity. And somebody on YouTube is like, bullshit, man. Here, they found it. Like, literally.
He was wearing Ron John, not Salt Life.
Right. So, like, you have in America, there's a higher standard for what people will call bullshit on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even in fiction stories, people will. There's a whole internet thread dedicated to, like,
apart mistakes and shit.
Right. What the Big Bang Theory is really about. What, like, I even heard, like, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like, the whole show is a dream. And he actually dies in the beginning. And that, his heaven is Bel-Air. And that's why you don't see his mom all the time. So like there's these pockets.
Yeah, well, there's a lady out there that came up with this theory that the Terminator movies were prequels to the Matrix.
So I've heard that too, because the machines take over. That actually has some legs.
Like there's like a lot. There's like a lot to it. If you listen to her break it down, you're like, well, damn. I know, right? I don't know what to say to that. I didn't think about it like that.
This is back to Shane Gillis. He's like, I had this drug dealer. You just want to get your drugs and get out. He's like, but this drug dealer was like, hey, man, you want to hang out and rap? He's like, I don't know, I guess. And he's like, we started smoking. He starts doing his rap. And I'm like, damn, this dude has bars. He can he can spit it. He has bars. So, like, what I think this is that it's Russia has bars. They tapped into the way Americans tell stories, and it hit a nerve in Europe. Mm-hmm. And that traveled here. They're like, hey, there's this guy, Sergei Ponomarenko. And the first thing I put into Google, and it's like, whatever, multi-year Olympic medalist. And I'm like, he has the same name. Come on. Come on. I know that's a very common name, Sergei. And I don't know about Ponomarenko, but it sounds Russian, right?
Right.
So I think this is one of those stories that whoever wrote this mystery really hit the nail on the head with storytelling. It's just the American audience was like, fuck that, dude, you're a fucking liar. Because they picked apart, Reddit picked it so, like, as soon as I put it into Reddit, it's like, this is bullshit, and there's 75 different threads that tell why it's bullshit, down to, when he's sitting in the psychiatrist's office. It's a killer story. It's really good.
It's a great story.
It's a great story. I want it to be true. I want people to be unstuck in time, but honestly, it's my problem with being unstuck in time is that why aren't they president? Why aren't they the richest people on earth? Like, if you were like Elon Musk, found out something, and he's from the 30s actually, and he found something out, and he was a scientist, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. Elon Musk, because you would use that, and that's the whole paradigm, is that if you have that power of knowledge, and people say it all the time, if I could just go back knowing what I know now, you're like, yeah, but you don't know what you know now. Like, that's the whole conundrum. It's like, yeah, of course, right, of course. You would just be a doctor, right? Because you're like, who cares? What really matters from 21 to 25? Yeah. But you don't have that ability, and I don't think anybody has yet.
I think somebody put out there once, they're like, if you could travel back in time, and with the knowledge you have now, what is the first three things that you would do? And it was like, I picked a date. I don't remember. It was like you could travel back 20 years in time or something like that. And what's the first three things you would do? I was like, buy Tesla stock, buy Amazon stock, buy, you know what I mean? Everybody's like, I'd do this. I'd tell my old self, and I'm like, I'd fucking invest.
It's like hot tub time machine. Lugal.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be Lugal.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
And I was trying to think of this earlier when we were doing the comparison movies and stuff. There's a comedian named Aaron Woodall, and he's got this hilarious bit about Harry Potter is just Star Wars with sucky lightsabers. And it's fucking hilarious because when he breaks it down, it is fucking dead on. He was like the son whose parents both died gets sent to live with his uncle.
Yeah, right.
A mysterious stranger shows up, takes him away to some school where some old guy that seems like he's high all the time teaches him the ways of this ancient magic. And even though he'll have this sort of weird crush on this sister-like figure, she'll only have affection for the quirky, funny sidekick. It's hilarious when he breaks the whole thing down, because at first you're like, nah, it's not. And then he starts breaking it down. You're like, holy shit, it is the exact same story.
It's true though. It's true. I think this is one of them. Like, it's a great story. There was Steven Spielberg had a series called Amazing Stories.
Yeah.
And this is one of those. This is like a Twilight Zone. Yeah. This is Russia's attempt at killer drama, and they nailed it. I mean, they nailed it because like everybody bought it except the dorks on Reddit. They're like, bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
they picked it apart. So I'm with you. I'm gonna say it didn't happen.
Yeah.
I think.
I might even say that guy that supposedly traveled 3,000 years into the future, that show we did, might have more weight than this one.
Yeah, and I think we talked about the guy on Instagram that everything stopped in 2027, and he might be in like an alternate universe. And we talked about that, and you're like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to do that shit. I think it's bullshit. I think he obviously has CGI capability.
Yeah,
because they like send him to like Times Square. They send him to places
where there's nobody's out.
Right.
And I think you could just get production enough to do that. Like
absolutely.
Where you could shut down you could pay everybody a little bit of money and be like, hey, stay indoors for 5 minutes.
You don't even need that. You need like computer and time.
Right.
Like if you have the right software, because that's how they do. I mean, like that movie I Am Legend, when like nobody's in Times Square, and that was before COVID, right? So like you don't have time to like shut Times Square down, nor do you have the money.
Right.
Like, I don't know. There's like a TGI Fridays in Times Square. There's a McDonald's there. What are you going to fucking tell them you're shutting it down?
Right.
I can say this, though.
It's Wild Wing Wednesday. Are you out of your mind?
So I went to work one day downtown LA, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, the whole thing is. And they had this guy on a fucking crane on a like pendulum, and he's held like, I don't know, like 60 stories up, right? And they're like releasing him and they're fucking filming it, and I'm like, what the fuck is it? And they're like, they're filming some movie, and everybody was just pissed. They fucking, now we're not gonna make any money today. But we have to be here, but we're not gonna make a fucking dollar. And they're like, the restaurant's getting paid, but we're not getting paid. And I'm like, that is bullshit. Like,
right?
You're not even gonna pay them like a couple $100 for coming in. So I think that's what happened here. This is an awesome attempt at TV, a terrible attempt at time travel.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
All right, so this didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
It's not even doubtful. This just didn't happen.
Yeah, it just didn't happen.
Okay. Well, I think we solved it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm Anthony.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Mario.
And this is Everything That's Weird. For show notes and merchandise, go to www.everythingthat'sweird.com. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And be sure to like, subscribe, and review anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening. See you next time.